So today I am joined in the studio by Adrian Davis, who's the lead consultant and founder of AD Sustainability. How are you, Adrian? Welcome
Very
to
well,
the podcast studio.
Sarah, thank you for having me. Thank you.
It's lovely to see you. So before we begin, I'm just going to give our listeners a little bit of background on Adrian and AD Sustainability. So Adrian actually founded AD Sustainability in 2013, following a 15-year career in full-time environmental and wider sustainability positions within several organisations, working in roles at technician to middle management level. In total, he has 26 years environmental and sustainability experience working in and supporting numerous multi-sector organisations, including Invest Northern Ireland, TransLink, Terex, Queen's University Belfast, Ulster University, the enterprise agencies and the local councils. So AD Sustainability supports clients in cost reduction, in performance improvement, in enhancing reputation and, crucially, in winning and retaining business. And that's the big one, isn't it, Adrian?
Yep, that's us.
So you've been doing this for 26 years. I didn't even think we talked about sustainability 26 years ago.
Yeah, well, 26 years ago it wasn't cool for a start, and it wasn't really a core business requirement. It was getting there. I knew it was going to come, but I thought it would have came sooner, but it's now arrived, if you like.
So how did you start into all of this area?
So I was always interested in sort of geography, subjects in and around geography. So GCSEs, A-levels in geography, and then always wanted to do an environmental degree. So my degree was in environmental technology in the University of Aberdeen, Dundee. So,
Goodness, and were there many others on your course?
There was probably about 12. Nobody from Northern Ireland, I might add. A lot of Scottish and a few English people as well. So yeah, it was a big enough, in terms of the number of people on it, but it was very much a fledgling course at the time at the university.
And as we said in the introduction, then you went on to work for many different organisations. But why did you start your own business?
So, 15-year career, as you said in the introduction, working for people, which was great. But I always felt there was something missing, and I wanted to choose my own path, make my own decisions and move things forward. There was a bit of frustration working as an employee, as a sort of specialist employed as like an environmental or sustainability sort of manager or engineer, and you were advising on things to do, and then some things didn't go ahead and you were getting a bit of frustration there from me, certainly. So I wanted to I knew I was good at what I did and I had the experience, and I wanted to build a better sort of platform out there and start the business.
And I suppose even just going back to when you were in those organisations, you said there sustainability and the environment, it certainly wasn't cool back then. How did you find that your audiences listened to you back then when you said, look, we need to be doing this is a good thing for us to be doing? What was the response generally?
Yeah, I think at the time when starting out straight after university, and maybe a few years after that, it was all about complying with legislation. So, for example, my first job in Seagate Technology, it was a wastewater treatment job, so it was running the wastewater treatment plant, and that was because there was licence conditions to discharge the wastewater into the River Roe in Limavady. So they're very stringent conditions, but that was a legal requirement, so it had to be done. But then the sort of tactics around those initial years was about sort of selling it, that it was all about saving money as well as reducing environmental impact. So, for example, in waste management, you could do things differently to reduce your waste costs. So slowly and surely people started seeing that, reducing costs as well as environmental impact reduction was the way forward.
Now, what's work like for you? How's business going?
Work is mad. Business is mad.
Right.
We have never been busier. That's just, there's so much demand. It's now become a core business requirement. Sustainability, in particular at the minute, in terms of our services, is on the carbon planning side, so carbon reduction plans. We would support a lot of SMEs and sort of manufacturing in different sectors. And what tends to happen now is the larger companies are now being mandated to report in terms of their carbon performance and their what's called the ESG is the latest sort of, I'll not say it's a buzzword, but it's the latest sustainability sort of phrase and terminology. So there's a lot of ESG and carbon reporting requirements on larger companies, but what they will have to do if they're not already doing it is they will have to cascade and ask that information into their supply base. So a lot of smaller companies are coming to us and asking us to help them reduce their carbon and develop these plans so that they can then feed that up into their main
Well, that's
customers.
it, because the supply chains and just evidencing that your suppliers are greener and they are sustainable and they're compliant. And
Absolutely.
I love your strap line that you adding value, not complexity, because most people, I'm sure, come to you and go, help, I don't understand any of this, these ISO whatever, or the legislation, or scope 1 and 2 and 3 emissions, help.
I think the thing about it is what happens is things tend to be repackaged. So we have terminology called like net zero, carbon reduction, circular economy, that kind of thing. But that's in old money, if you like, is just an environmental strategy, an environmental and energy strategy. It's the same sort of principles. It's just kind of reframed and sort of accounting, sort of in terms of carbon accounting, for example. So if you're talking about back in, it would have been energy management and energy reduction. If you reduce your energy consumption, you will reduce your carbon emissions as a result. So it's all about, carbon equals something being either reduced or replacing the carbon intensity of what you're using in terms of renewable technologies.
So when you go and meet with someone, or, you get a new client, where do you start?
So our general approach is, if somebody comes to talk to us and asks if they need help or something, we would have an initial session with them, asking them what they actually want. We would never tell anybody. We would advise what we think you should do, but we will never say, look, this is what you absolutely have to do. It tends to be overcomplicated, I would say, some solutions that are offered, but we are very practical. Our strapline suggests that, obviously. Practical solutions, we strip everything back and saying, look, this is what you could do, and give people different options. And I try as much as possible up front to say, if you want to really go way, way down the line, it may cost you more money than if you want to maybe start with smaller baby steps, if you like.
And it really is starting with those smaller baby steps, because you've got to start somewhere. And what do people need to be thinking about? You've mentioned waste, but, talk us through the difference between, say, scope 1 and 2 emissions and scope 3.
Okay, so scope 1 and 2 is essentially anything energy related. So that would be the electricity you use, the kerosene you use, any fuel for heating, so kerosene, natural gas, diesel for generators, that kind of thing. So each of those have a carbon emissions factor. So you basically, to calculate your carbon footprint, you take the number of units you use. So for consumption for electricity, for example, it's kilowatt hours times this carbon factor gives you your carbon emissions. So that's how you work out your carbon footprint. So anything energy related is scope 1 and 2. And then scope 3 is basically everything else, an absolute minefield.
Right.
So that's waste, that can be business travel, that can be the buildings you're in if they're leased assets, transportation of goods and services, transportation of raw materials. So there's 15 different subsets within scope 3 under what's called the greenhouse gas protocol.
Goodness me.
So quite complicated.
And when you go in, how savvy do you think people are by the time you come to see them? I mean, about these things, and are they really pleased that they can make these small tweaks and it doesn't cost an awful lot of money? Or do you think people are going, no, I'm going to have to fork out for this?
The general perception would be, massively, it's kind of, this is very, very complicated, and this is going to be very, and that's because all this terminology is being thrown about, and it's quite new terminology, but it's actually old principles, if that makes sense. So it's going in and educating people that, you can do very quick wins. You can go and look around a business, for example, and say, why is that machine running out of hours when it's not really running? And you would be really surprised when you have a fresh approach and fresh eyes into a business, what you can actually see. Invariably, 9 times out of 10, we will find opportunities that's either low cost or no cost, a lot of which is through sort of behaviour change. But it's also that you can change sort of settings and what's called like building management systems and heating controls. So if you can sort of, if your heating controls, for example, if you shave an hour a day off what you have programmed that to do, you're going to be saving money and you're going to be reducing your carbon emissions.
The thing is, you don't know until you know, and it is that fresh pair of eyes, it is that consultancy that you can bring that just makes people realise.
Yeah.
And then I suppose it's fine if the CEO says we need to be doing this, but then you need to get everybody else on board. How do you do that?
So that's all about culture change and behavioural change, and that is one of our service areas is awareness training amongst staff. The key thing for a business is to get the senior management level on board initially, and then they can drive it. But it's not going to be successful unless you engage those that are actually on the ground, if you like, and doing the work. And generally, our approach is we would talk to the people on the ground when we are implementing systems or looking for actions or initiatives, because invariably they know what the problems are or the issues are. They maybe can't put it in the context of carbon emissions or whatever, but they know, if you cut the amount of running hours on this machine, it's going to save some amount of money. And there are at times a bit of frustration at that level because they've been kind of trying to tell people within the business that is the problem. And it kind of takes somebody like us to go in and put our logo on a report that probably could already have been done internally. And that was part of the frustration when I was working as an employee as well.
Do you think the carrot or stick works better?
I would be a carrot man myself, and to be honest with you, but I think the stick has its place as well. I mean, what you're finding now is a lot of the larger organisations are being mandated, as I said earlier, to report their carbon emissions, so they're going to have to do things about it.
And if they don't?
So if they don't, they have the legal side of things if they don't report. But there's so much more now about reputation as well. So now more and more people are looking to reputable companies to buy goods and services from. So it's all about, doing the right thing and being a responsible business at the end of the day.
And as a result, your business, as you said, it's crazy. It's completely manic at the minute.
Yeah.
You started out on your own. Do you have other employees now, or what way are you growing with this demand? So
2013, as I say, started the company. It was myself for about 7.5 years with my wife, Sarah, another Sarah.
Great name.
Also involved, absolutely. Also involved. So, and then sort of November 22. So right up until that point, we were sort of building up as a one-person band, if you like, with Sarah helping in the background. So it got to the point now where the demand was just crazy and I just couldn't maintain it. So we took a bit of a punt in November 2022 and recruited 2 full-time consultants. And then as we brought the additional resource on, the more opportunities arose. So in May 2023, we brought another consultant on. So that brought us up to 5. And then in October of last year, we've brought another consultant on as well.
Yes.
So we're 5 in total at the minute. And we did have 6, but we're now going out to re-recruit here in Q1. So yeah, we've pretty rigorous growth plans over the next sort of 3 to 5 years.
What sort of people do you want in your company?
Good people, nice people.
Yeah.
Practical people, more first and foremost. And we have a good mix of consultants at the minute who, some of them are very technical and can design renewable technology systems like solar panels, solar arrays and things like that. But we also have consultants who are very practical in terms of their approach and looking at the low-hanging fruit and breaking things down and making things simple. Our consultant team, all of our consultants, have had previous experience of working in organisations as environmental officers or environmental engineers. And that's kind of a strategy that I have purposely pursued, that we have consultants who have sort of walked the ground within organisations as well.
And how have you found the transition from being kind of the Lone Ranger or with Sarah at your side to actually having employees?
It's been tough.
Okay.
It's been tough.
Why?
Yeah. For me, it's been sort of releasing my work. That's been quite a challenge.
I hear this all the time from people sitting exactly where you are. This is your baby.
It's my baby.
You've built it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's all about, and it's ultimately all about having the time to spend with your team so that they know how things should be done and how we should be delivering our advice and our solutions to our clients.
Is there a trust and a fear around them having all of the information and going elsewhere?
No, not at all. I suppose it's more a frustration on my part that because what has happened up until probably this year is I have been so heavily involved in delivering projects, there hasn't been enough time spent with the team, mentoring them, advising them, and that is absolutely going to change this year, because that was one of the big sort of I've taken on from last year, was as a big learning was spending more time on the business, not in the business.
Absolutely. The previous guest who was in recording where you are today was talking exactly about that, Alan Brana from the Alchemists Forum, about taking that time out to work on your business. Now you've got people who can do the day-to-day.
Yes, exactly.
Where do you see yourself going with the business?
I think I would say we would probably triple in number. We're aiming to triple in numbers probably within the next 5 years, I would have thought. And just because of demand and the opportunities. So yeah, pretty rigorous growth.
You're definitely doing the right thing at the right time.
Yeah.
So managing people and sort of taking that time has been a struggle for you. Anything else about people management?
I think the recruitment side has been difficult. There's just because there's such a demand for sustainability and environmental professionals now. A lot of consultancies are now going out and looking for those type of professionals. So it's been difficult enough, but I'm delighted with the team I have. We've been very fortunate in who we've been able to recruit.
And what about the big organisations themselves? Are you finding that they're more and more having people that's their designated person in-house rather than going out? Is that something that is a challenge too?
I suppose there was part of the frustration when I was sort of as an employee. I feel like there was limited opportunities at that stage to progress to like a senior level dedicated sustainability role. There was discussions with, progressing into senior roles, but not sustainability and environmental roles, which is something I'm very, very passionate about and something I always want to do. So I didn't really want to do that. So that's kind of one of the other reasons why I sort of went out and started the business.
And you must be looking at these other companies now going, goodness, I would have loved that role or this.
Absolutely.
It's definitely the world has caught up to where you were. But the fact that you've got that 26-year experience, that must set you apart from other people.
I believe it does, in terms of, in particular, because I have the mix of 15 years working across 5 or 6 different employers, learning, and two of those roles are actually brand new roles. So I shaped the roles and shaped the strategy and shaped the initiatives and arrangements and operational controls, etc. To drive improvement forward, and that's always a good learning curve for me as well, and it has helped me in developing the business itself.
So when you maybe are approached by someone, a client, a potential client, do they come to you because of this experience, do you think? Do you think that they choose you over others because of this? I
believe so. Yeah, I believe so. And just because I've been in the space for so long, I'm not saying well known, but I have a fairly decent network, and we've been sort of strategically sort of increasing our connections and things on LinkedIn. So I think because we have the experience, people know that we can strip things back and make them as practical as possible for people.
So how did you find your first clients?
Quite fortunate, to be fair. Now, and there'll be other people on this podcast who would have taken absolute massive risks. Now, I was quite fortunate, and there was another consultancy who had won quite a big contract to support, it was Bombardier Aerospace, Spirit Aerosystems at the time, to support their environmental sort of initiatives and environmental management practices. So they had sort of approached me when I worked for Ulster University to come and run their team for them as a contractor sort of thing within that contract, wider contract. So that was I'll not say it was an easy move, because it was moving from a university with a decent salary, really good holidays, brilliant pension, great team colleagues and things like that. So it was a big enough decision to make, but it was made that bit easier because I had this full-time contractor sort of role. So that was okay to do, and it was all good. So it was just decision talking with Sarah about, this is a big move. We're moving away from a very comfortable, fairly secure, employment, to just going, right, let's go and work as a contractor. But, it's worked out really well. And just basically, as we worked in the full-time sort of contracting hours within Bombardier, it was just gradually building up sort of smaller clients as that went along and progressed. And that was all about existing contacts, people I'd maybe worked with who'd moved to other organisations, contractors and consultants who I'd worked with before, and just approaching them to see if they needed any help.
So obviously one huge company there, but did the others come quickly after?
Yes, quite quickly, yeah. Just as I say, just approaching people that I'd worked with before, and they needed help, so works with the likes of Belfast Met and sort of some of the bigger waste companies and things like that, because they had done waste contract. We had managed waste contracts through being employed in Queen's University and things like that.
And you had those relationships already,
Absolutely.
Which is fantastic.
Which is very important, yeah.
What's Sarah's background then, and how did she find coming into the business?
So Sarah, funny story. So Sarah's actually was an environmental professional as well. So Sarah actually completed a master's in clean technology from Newcastle University many years ago, but we actually met at an environmental conference in Nottingham. So Sarah
very
was
sexy.
Absolutely, yes, certainly worked for me.
It did.
So Sarah was at the time. Sarah was actually waste manager for Newcastle University,
Goodness.
And I was environmental services manager for Queen's University. So we met at a conference, and the rest is history, as they say.
Oh my goodness! Yeah. Was there a sustainable theme to the wedding then? I'm wondering.
Well, there was. Yeah, there were different things we did. Sort of very limited plastics, and the food choices and things like that. We were very careful about. So there's a sustainable theme throughout in terms of, and then we've 2 young boys, so we're teaching our boys as we go as well.
Oh, lovely. What ages are the boys?
So we've got Max, who is 11, and Ben, who is 6.
And would they be eco warriors?
They are, and I think a lot of that comes down to their education. There's a lot of eco schools initiatives and things going on, which is fantastic to see. So there's going to be a point in time where they're going to be teaching us how to do it right.
Do you think you'd like them to come into the business?
Yes, I would. Whether they will or not, I don't know. Max is sort of IT mad at the minute. He's gaming mad at the minute. So, and Ben, he's quite sort of arty and things like that, So, but yeah, I would ultimately like it to stay, within the family, possibly.
How do you feel about what you've achieved?
When I actually take time to step back, I'm very proud of where we've got to, but I'm even more excited of where we can go. I mean, spent a lot of time towards the end of last year and initially here the first week sort of projecting out where we might go in 2025, and I mean it's sky's the limit sort of thing. We've been quite lucky in that we don't really proactively do a lot of work to bring in business, but it's something we're going to do this year. A lot of it's been sort of word of mouth recommendation and working on frameworks like Invest NI frameworks and things like that.
And have you had many people want to invest in you?
In terms of
people going, I like this business, I like what he does. Do you think people have approached you yet saying, would you sell this?
Not yet. Need to leave it a couple of years yet to grow it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have an exit strategy at this point?
Working on one, yes. Working on one.
Apparently that's what you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
from talking to people sitting in front of
yeah. But I mean, your exit strategy is essentially what you're doing. You're building the business to make it as healthy as possible and as attractive as possible. And if somebody comes knocking, we'll certainly open the door and have a conversation if it ever arises. And
where are most of your clients from?
So at the minute, largely Northern Ireland. Probably about 90% is Northern Ireland, 10% in the south. But that's one of our key growth areas for this year, is the south. Lots of grant opportunities in the south in terms of sustainability support for businesses down there. And
any issues around different jurisdictions and, European legislation versus UK? It's all
derived from EU, so it's all largely similar. There's some sort of tweaks here and there, slightly different, but in terms of sort of pollution control, sort of permitting and things like that, it's largely similar, but it's just, there are slight differences here and there, but ultimately it's all derived from EU sort of directive. So, a big challenge is when we're trying to move to the south is the insurances and the VAT and all that sort of good stuff that you have to learn as a business owner. So definitely you need to take more time out of the business to work out all of those things. Yeah. And well, purposely at the start, I engaged accountants right from the start, and who also act as sort of company secretary. So they've been great advising on sort of VAT status and making sure you're doing things right in terms of your accounting practices and things like that. So. Here's a big question for you. What role, Adrian, has failure played in your entrepreneurial journey so far? Ooh, failure. So, possibly failure. Would you call it failure? I don't know. Well, that's it. What does it mean? Exactly, yeah. No, we've been doing quite well in terms of failures, nothing really major. I suppose there was a bit of a bump in the road, shall we say, when I was working for that other consultancy I mentioned, a contract end. So, once the Bombardier job finished, I was kind of working for them, helping them with other projects and things like that. And a bit of background context was Sarah and I had just got a mortgage approved, a rather large mortgage I might add, for another house. And right in the middle of it all, once the mortgage was offered to us, the consultancy company folded that I'd worked to. So the decision, that was a spanner in the works, rather large spanner in the works, yeah. So the decision was either go back to full-time employment, secure blah, 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 or we take a punt, we take a risk, and we really aggressively build the business as a one-person band with Sarah obviously supporting in the background. So that's what we did. So and here we are. That's not a failure at all. No, that's not. A story of taking a risk and how it paid off. Yeah, and that was a big risk. I mean, huge. And I mean, that's probably something you'll ask about is, advice to budding entrepreneurs or people who want to start a business. I mean, when I look back on what I have done and risks I have taken, before I started the business and I asked that same question, this is what you're going to do, I would have looked at myself in the mirror and going, you're mad, but here we are. Here we are indeed.
So you
just
should be
shows you.
very proud of
Oh,
what
absolutely.
you've achieved.
Yeah, no, without a doubt.
And
Yeah.
what's it like being an entrepreneur? What's it like being your own boss?
It's brilliant. Yeah, it's great.
What does that give you?
So it's the flexibility, and it's the sort of empowerment, your own empowerment. You know, that you can make the decisions, you can set the prices for jobs. You know, you can employ people, you can set the terms and conditions for your staff. So it's just the power that it gives you. You know, in terms of don't mean power as in that sort of thing. You know, but
empowered.
it's
You feel
satisfaction.
empowered,
Yeah,
and
feel
the
empowered.
learning,
Exactly, that's it.
and the growth for
growth,
you as an
the
individual.
growth, yeah, and it's all about getting out your comfort zone. You know, you can't stay in your comfort zone, or you'll just stagnate. You know, it's all about.
Completely. What do you think you've learned most about yourself? That I know that you looked in the mirror and you thought you would be mad to do that. I can't believe that. But you know, what have you really learned about yourself on this journey?
I think quite resilient. Quite good dealing with stress. But working for yourself is a different kind of stress than working within an organisation and getting stressed because of frustration. So the stress is, I'm not saying it's a healthy stress, it's a healthier stress running your business. But yeah, it's dealing with stress and being resilient, and you know, helping people is what it's all about. So it's the feedback you get and the buzz you get from really helping people, and people who are coming to you genuinely sort of think, we need this help, otherwise we might lose this business. And we are going in and we're trying to help them, and we are helping a lot of businesses in that regard.
Is that where it starts and finishes for you? I mean, is it more about that than it is about the bottom line?
Yeah. I mean, we obviously we want to be making money, but I mean, it's all about making sure we have a comfortable life. And we're very fortunate that we have that, and we can bring our kids up. And I'm very fortunate that as a business owner, I can pretty much every night sit around the table with my kids and Sarah and have our dinner. And that's something I'll never take for granted. The other thing is, you know, we purposely have good terms and conditions for our staff, even though we're a very small relatively small consultancy business.
So what kind of terms and conditions? What do you have rules at work? And you know, can people design the job to work for them?
Yeah, so we try. The plan is to empower our staff as much as possible. Initially, once I sort of set what the sort of standards, if you like, what's expected. We kind of try to give our staff as much as possible sort of leeway to sort of go their own way, because they generally are well experienced in terms of what they've done, and as I say, they've had experience working within organisations. So yeah, we do try to do that. And other conditions, so we would give them, they've all got private healthcare insurance, income protection, enhanced holidays and things like that. So, but that's very important in this market, because it's an employees market at the minute. So when you try to recruit people, you have to make sure you have the right conditions for them.
And your family obviously is so important to you, so you realise that for everyone else, and maybe because you've had that experience of being that employee as well,
yeah, absolutely.
You know about that time and that quality time with people that you love is crucial to you being a good employee as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, our staff are, you know, people will say this, but you know, they are extended family at the end of the day, and we always want to make sure that they're all right. You know, sometimes they may not think that, sometimes I give them a bit of a hard time, but you know, it's all in the right way to make them better and make us better ultimately.
Obviously, you need them if you're heading on these, you know, you've got these targets now and you want to, you know, triple the numbers in the next 5 years. You need them to stay with you. You need that loyalty. You need that buy-in. How do you celebrate success with them?
Well, we would go out for celebratory lunches and things like that.
Lovely.
Yeah, we've also got we have a bonus scheme as well as part of the conditions. So when the business does well, they also will do well. So in particular this year, we think is going to be a particularly successful year. So they will benefit from that in terms of the bonus side of things. But we do things like volunteering days and things with them as well. And we're very flexible in terms of if people have appointments for family, you know, things like that, we would just let them do it, because I trust them. You know, I think in one of the original job adverts says, we don't care when the work gets done as long as it gets done. So that's the way we work. But obviously if you need to go to site for a client, you know, you have to do that. But any other work like report writing and stuff just gets done when it needs to get done. So
are most people working remotely then, and then just go and see the clients as and when?
At the minute, everybody's remotely. We've had an office. One of our clients has kindly given us a smaller sort of office within their building, which we've used this past few months. But we're now about to sign on for our own office in Belfast, which will have our own front door and our own sort of obviously logos, etc. So we're quite excited about that. But that's going to be like a 1 or 2 day a week. So that we can all get round the table, because as we grow now, we're really going to have to get involved in bigger projects, and so communication is key. So face-to-face communication is going to become more and more important.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think we hear that all the time,
Yeah.
and especially when you're not all working together, that's when the
Yeah.
you know the miscommunication happens,
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
the assumptions are
Yeah.
made,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
all of that in that vacuum. I'm just wondering too, with those ambitious targets, which no doubt you will meet, but you know, there's also that fear when you've grown from 2 people
Mm-hmm.
to 5 people. What if that ginormous order contract comes in? You know, how do you scale up to meet it? Have you had to turn down work
At
already?
Well, no, we haven't turned any work down. We pitched tail end of last year for a global contract to do a large ESG reporting work. So we pitched to the New York headquarter consult team for that. Now, it was going to be a massive challenge for us, but I mean, we were up for it.
You put your hat in.
Put our hat in, and you know, if it came, it unfortunately didn't. But if it had happened, we just would have brought people on board. Fortunate, I have a lot of colleagues within the network who we can call on as associates to come in and do the work, help with us.
Oh, that's brilliant. So you've got that backup
So we have
plan.
that,
You've got
yeah.
the reserves
Yeah.
are there.
We're largely the strategy is self-delivery, but where we need to bring the additional resource in on a temporary basis, then that's what we would do.
Gosh, very, very exciting. So you are going to be pitching for those bigger pieces of work.
Yes, yeah. I
And
think
on a
that's
global
where
level.
that's where the business is going to go. We're going to be going for sort of larger clients, larger contracts. So we keep an eye out on e-tenders, NI, and all the public tenders, as well as sort of bigger organisations that we could potentially be approaching.
So being now a CEO of your own company, does it give you a greater appreciation of what other companies are going through on their sustainable journey? Is it a criteria for your potential clients that they see what you're doing as a business?
It's certainly for the bigger contracts and the formal tenders, if you like. And a lot of them do ask what your qualifications are, what your experience are, give us case studies and what this is. But largely, the majority of it is just the reputation and then getting in front of people and talking to them and saying, look, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and then you say, look, I've been doing this 26 years, Adam and the team's 8 or 9 years, Andrew's 3 or 4, and it's just explaining that there's 4 or 5 of us who can deliver a project and we have the experience.
Yeah, and just trust us and we will do this for you,
exactly.
And we'll make it easy for you.
Exactly, and that's what
the
it's
key.
all about. It's all about stripping everything back and making it practical and common sense terms, adding value, not complexity.
What do you think you'd like your legacy to be, Adrian?
I think I'd like to be known as someone who's quite practical and approachable and good to get on with and delivering really good solutions to make changes within businesses, ultimately improve profitability.
Here's the big global question now, though.
Mm-hmm.
All of this work is happening around the world and in some countries better than others,
Yes.
but we all know that we need to control CO2 and carbon emissions to save the planet.
Yeah.
How passionately do you feel about that? And when you look at some governments and you look around the world now, and maybe there are wars happening, or there's cost of living crisis, or the energy crisis, are you hopeful for the future of the planet and the next generation?
I would be hopeful enough. I think there's been a few sort of issues. One coming up, I think President Trump was going to be a backward step. Previously, the Conservatives, when they rolled back in a lot of net zero commitments, that didn't help either. I think things will improve in the UK. Certainly Ireland and the EU are well on their way and very committed to it. So I'm optimistic that with another cycle things will change again. But there's massive problems because you have the developing countries need to develop obviously to improve their way of life, and that's all about sustainability as well. Quality of life is a very important aspect of that. So they need to have the opportunity to develop. Developed countries have already done that. They've already burned all their fossil fuels. They've already done all that. So there needs to be compensation and fair compensation for what's called a just transition, so that everybody can improve the quality of their life effectively.
Absolutely. The developing countries didn't cause
Yes, exactly.
the crisis that we're in
Exactly
now.
that.
And just looking around the world and the extreme weather conditions that we're seeing, and wildfires and flooding. Yeah, it's something has to happen and happen quickly.
Absolutely, and it's a wider conversation, not just on carbon and sustainability, about misinformation and the approaches that's being taken.
But
quite
responsibility.
quite into my politics, so I could go on.
Good. No,
So,
we'll
yeah.
not make it too political, but I think
No.
ultimately it's for everyone
Yes, absolutely.
to consider and think about, and businesses too.
Yes, without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, but I think from a business perspective, again, when we look at it quite practically, if you implement some of these measures and if you invest some of the sort of more higher level measures, you will reduce costs, you will improve your performance, you will enhance your reputation, you will win business, and you will retain business. It's pretty straightforward for me. Obviously there's complexities around available funding and things like that, but it's it makes complete business sense to be more sustainable in your operations.
I'm thinking back to you in Dundee University,
Yes.
at the University of Aberdeen now, and thinking you in your class of 12 people, these
Yes.
eco warriors way back then. Now I'm sure those university classrooms are packed full, and you can study for lots of careers in green jobs.
Yes.
But I'm wondering, do you have any advice for entrepreneurs who would like to start a business focused on sustainability or other maybe social impact areas?
I think just go for it. I mean, we've already talked about the profile of sustainability within business and indeed within government as well. There's massive opportunity. So I would say just absolutely go for it. There's no better time to start a sustainable business or sustainability consultancy type business or social impact. Your social impact, social value is massive now within public procurement. So there's huge opportunity.
And jobs out there that we've never even heard of or imagined yet.
Exactly.
So it's
yes.
quite exciting.
Exactly.
Really,
It exactly is. Absolutely.
There's a final question. I do
Okay.
feel you've probably answered it already, but I've got to ask you.
Okay.
The purpose of this podcast, Adrian, is to inspire existing business owners and ambitious entrepreneurs to grow their business by offering an insight into the success of businesses such as yours, such as AD Sustainability. But what advice would you give to people who may have the idea but have no idea where to begin or don't know whether the risk is worth taking?
Okay, so the risk is worth taking. Go for it. Absolutely go for it. Reach out. Don't be scared to talk to people who have already done it. I am open to talk to anybody if they need any advice or anything. People don't bite. The one thing I learned was, when I started out was I was a bit reluctant to talk to people that were established. But as I went on, when you actually go and talk to them, they're very, very open. They're very, very good at giving advice. So don't be scared to talk to other people. Network. Get your name out there. And join organisations such as the Federation of Small Businesses would be one example. We're members of Northern Ireland Chamber of Commerce as well, and brilliant networking opportunities. And sort of the FSB in particular are great for small businesses, particularly starting out, because it's like a couple of £100, I think. And you get so much more benefit as well out of that in terms of, insurance, discount and that sort of thing. So there's
That's
loads
really
of
good to know.
opportunity. Yeah, and there's also the Go Succeed programme, which is fantastic as well for startups. You get lots of good support and lots of business mentoring for startup companies as well.
So don't be an island. Go out there and talk
Exactly.
to people.
Do not
Absolutely.
be an island, absolutely. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure to have you in the podcast studio today, Adrian Davis, lead consultant and founder of AD Sustainability, and I wish you very well for the next 5 years in that exciting journey that you're on.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Nice to speak to you. Thank you.
And thank you again for tuning in today to another fantastic episode of the Public Eye Podcast. I'll see you again soon. This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service for our team, using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving your listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.